My name is Pearl Winters, and I'm 71 years old. For 65 years of my life, I bent myself into whatever shape my family needed me to be. I was the peacemaker, the understanding one, the woman who swallowed her pride and her hurt to keep everyone else comfortable. But on Thanksgiving Day, 2024, standing in my daughter-in-law's pristine kitchen with a green bean casserole going cold in my hands, I heard 4 words that changed everything. She always brings trouble. Those words weren't shouted. They weren't even said with particular malice. They were spoken in that casual, dismissive tone that somehow cuts deeper than anger ever could. And they were about me. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only seconds, my heart pounding so loud I was sure everyone could hear it. And then I did something I'd never done before in my entire life. I set down that casserole, picked up my purse and my coat, and I walked out. No explanation. No dramatic speech. No tears. I just left. And let me tell you something. That decision, that single moment of choosing myself over keeping the peace, it unraveled secrets that had been buried for decades. It exposed truths that should have been spoken years ago. And it taught me the most important lesson I've ever learned. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and your family is to stop accepting unacceptable treatment. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand why those 4 words hit me like a physical blow, why they were the final straw after years of bending and breaking, I need to take you back to the beginning. And before I do, if you've ever felt like the problem in your own family, if you've ever wondered if you're too sensitive or if you're imagining the coldness, please subscribe to Family Tales. These stories matter. Your pain matters. And you're not alone. Let me start by telling you about my family, or rather, the family I thought I had. I was married to Richard Winters for 47 years before he passed away from a heart attack in 2019. We had 2 children, Michael, who's 45 now, and Rebecca, who's 42. Richard was a good man, a steady man, the kind of husband who never forgot our anniversary, and who held my hand through every difficult moment life threw at us. When he died, it felt like half of me died too. But I had my children. I had my grandchildren. I told myself I still had family, still had purpose, still had a place in this world. Michael married Jennifer 15 years ago. Jennifer came from money, old money, the kind that comes with country club memberships and fundraiser galas and opinions about which silver pattern is appropriate for which occasion. She was beautiful, polished, and from the very first time Michael brought her home, I could see that she found me lacking. It wasn't anything she said, not at first. It was the way her eyes would flicker over my modest home. The way she'd smile, that tight smile, when I'd serve dinner on everyday dishes instead of fine china. The way she'd gently correct my grammar or suggest that maybe I should consider updating my wardrobe. I'm sure Pearl means well. I once overheard her saying to Michael, "She's just simple. Not everyone can be sophisticated." Simple. As if the 71 years I'd lived, the family I'd raised, the marriage I'd nurtured, the career I'd had as a nurse for 40 years, as if all of that could be reduced to one dismissive word. But I swallowed my hurt. Michael loved her, and I wanted my son to be happy. So I tried harder. I watched cooking shows and attempted complicated recipes when they came to visit. I bought new clothes from department stores instead of thrift shops. I learned which topics were acceptable for conversation, and which ones made Jennifer's smile grow even tighter. It was never enough. Rebecca, my daughter, took a different path. She married a man named Tom, and they moved to Oregon where they run a small organic farm. We're close, or as close as we can be with 3,000 miles between us. She calls every week, visits when she can. But she's built a life far from the family drama, and I don't blame her one bit. Which meant that most of my family interactions revolved around Michael and Jennifer and their 3 children. Emma, who's 13, Sophie, who's 11, and Jackson, who's 9. I love those children with every fiber of my being. I babysat them when they were small, before Jennifer decided that a professional nanny would be more appropriate. I knitted them blankets and baked them cookies and showed up to every school play and soccer game I was told about, which, as the years went on, became fewer and fewer. "We didn't think you'd be interested," Jennifer would say with that smile. "It's just a practice, not a real game." Or, "The recital is at 7. I know that's past your bedtime." I was 68, not 98. But again I swallowed my hurt. I showed up when I was invited. I stayed away when I wasn't. I sent birthday cards with generous checks inside and Christmas presents that I agonized over, trying to find the perfect gift that would make my grandchildren's faces light up. Last year I gave Emma a beautiful journal, leather-bound, with her initials embossed on the cover. I'd seen her scribbling in notebooks, and I thought she might be interested in writing. Jennifer opened it before Emma could. "Oh, how thoughtful," she'd said in that tone that meant the opposite. "Though Emma is really more into technology these days. Maybe next year you could just send a gift card? It's so much easier." But I kept trying. Keep bending. Kept molding myself into whatever shape might finally be acceptable. And then came Thanksgiving 2024. Jennifer had volunteered to host, which she did most years. Her house was a showplace. A sprawling suburban palace with a professional-grade kitchen and a dining room that could seat 20. She'd made it very clear that hosting Thanksgiving was quite the undertaking, and that everyone needed to contribute. I'd been assigned a green bean casserole, the same dish I'd been making for 45 years, the same dish that Richard had always asked for, the same dish that had been a staple at every family gathering we'd ever had. I made it the morning of Thanksgiving, following the recipe I knew by heart. Cream of mushroom soup, green beans, fried onions on top. Nothing fancy but reliable. Comforting. Traditional. I arrived at Jennifer's house at 2 in the afternoon as requested. The driveway was full of cars, Jennifer's parents' Mercedes, her brother's Tesla, Michael's BMW. I parked my 10-year-old Honda on the street and carefully carried my casserole dish up the front walk. The door was unlocked, so I let myself in. The house smelled amazing. Roasted turkey, fresh bread, something with cinnamon. I could hear voices and laughter coming from the back of the house. I made my way to the kitchen, a massive room with marble countertops and top-of-the-line appliances. Jennifer was there, along with her mother Patricia, and her sister-in-law Marissa. They were all dressed beautifully, Jennifer in a cream cashmere sweater and designer jeans, Patricia in a silk blouse, Marissa in something that probably cost more than my mortgage payment. I was wearing my nicest slacks and a festive sweater I'd bought on sale. Looking at them, I suddenly felt like exactly what Jennifer thought I was. Simple. "Pearl," Jennifer said, her voice bright but her eyes cool. "You made it. Just set that on the counter over there." I placed my casserole dish where she'd indicated, next to what looked like a gourmet green bean dish with almonds and some kind of fancy vinaigrette. "Oh," Jennifer said, noticing. "You made green bean casserole too. How redundant." Patricia laughed, a tinkling sound. "Well, I'm sure people will appreciate having options. Traditional and elevated." Elevated. As if my dish was somehow beneath them. "I can take mine back home if it's a problem," I offered, my cheeks burning. "Don't be silly," Jennifer said, waving her hand dismissively. "It's fine. There's always room for comfort food." The way she said comfort food made it sound like an insult. I stood there awkwardly, not sure what to do with myself. The three women had returned to their conversation, effectively dismissing me. I heard fragments, something about a charity gala, a new interior designer, someone's daughter getting into Yale. "I should go say hello to Michael and the kids," I said to no one in particular. "They're in the den," Jennifer said without looking up from the turkey she was basking in. "Michael's watching football with my father and brother. The children are upstairs, but please don't disturb them. They're doing homework." Homework. On Thanksgiving. I wandered toward the den, feeling like a ghost in this house. Michael was indeed watching football, sandwiched between Jennifer's father James and her brother Christopher. They were drinking beer and shouting at the television. "Hi, sweetheart," I said to Michael, leaning down to kiss his cheek. "Hey, Mom," he said, barely glancing at me before returning his attention to the game. "Grab a seat if you want." There were no empty seats. I stood there for a moment, waiting for someone to make room, but no one moved. No one even seemed to notice I was there. "I think I'll just go see if Jennifer needs any help," I said. Michael grunted in response. I returned to the kitchen, where the three women were still chatting. "Can I help with anything?" I asked. Jennifer glanced at me. "Everything's under control. But thank you. I could set the table or—" "The table's already set," Patricia interjected. "Jennifer did it yesterday. She's so organized." Maybe I could. Pearl, Jennifer said, a slight edge in her voice now. Really, we have it handled. Why don't you just relax? Relax. In a house where I felt about as welcome as a stray cat. I ended up sitting alone in the formal living room. A room that looked like it had never been lived in, with white furniture that was clearly for show rather than comfort. I sat perched on the edge of a chair, my hands folded in my lap, watching the minutes tick by on an ornate clock on the mantel. 65 years of trying to fit in, and I'd never felt more out of place. At 4 o'clock, Jennifer called everyone to dinner. The dining room table was stunning, fine china, crystal glasses, fresh flowers, candles. Place cards indicated where everyone should sit. I found mine at the far end of the table, wedged between Jennifer's teenage nephew who spent the entire meal on his phone, and an empty chair. Michael sat at the other end, next to Jennifer. My grandchildren were scattered throughout, but none of them were near me. Emma was talking animatedly with Jennifer's mother. Sophie was giggling with Marissa's daughter. Jackson was showing his Uncle Christopher something on a tablet. Dinner was served. The food was beautiful, and I'm sure it tasted wonderful, but I could barely eat. Every bite felt like it was sticking in my throat. When the green beans came around, I watched as people passed over my casserole, and took servings of Jennifer's fancy version instead. By the time the dish reached me, it was still almost completely full. "Oh, Pearl," Patricia said from across the table, her voice carrying. "Is that your casserole? The one you bring every year?" "Yes," I said quietly. "How traditional," she said, in the same tone Jennifer had used earlier. Several people chuckled. I felt my face burn. I took a small serving of my own dish, even though I wasn't hungry anymore. The conversation flowed around me. Stories were told. Jokes were made, plans were discussed. I might as well have been invisible. Not one person asked me a question. Not one person tried to include me in the conversation. At one point, Emma mentioned a school project she was working on, and I leaned forward, eager to connect with my granddaughter. "That sounds fascinating, Emma. What's it about?" Before Emma could answer, Jennifer cut in. "It's quite advanced, Pearl. AP history. Very complex stuff." The implication was clear. Too complex for me to understand. Emma gave me an apologetic look, but didn't elaborate. The conversation moved on. Dinner ended. Dessert was served, an array of fancy pies and cakes from an expensive bakery. I'd offered to bring my apple pie, the one I'd been making for decades, but Jennifer had told me not to bother. "I have the desserts covered," she'd said. After dessert, the men returned to the den for more football. The children scattered to various parts of the house. And I found myself alone again, standing in that massive, perfect living room, wondering why I'd even bothered to come. I decided to help clean up. It was something to do, at least. I returned to the kitchen, where Jennifer, Patricia, and Marissa were loading the dishwasher and putting away leftovers. They were talking and laughing, the three of them moving in perfect synchronization like they'd done this 1,000 times before. "Can I help?" I asked. "We've got a system," Jennifer said. "But thanks." I stood there uselessly, watching them work, feeling more and more like an intruder in a space where I didn't belong. And then it happened. I stepped back to give them more room, and I didn't realize I was so close to the refrigerator. Patricia turned with a container of something in her hands and bumped into me. The container fell, and whatever was inside spilled all over the pristine white tile floor. "Oh," Patricia exclaimed. "Oh no, it was some kind of cranberry sauce, and it was everywhere, deep red, spreading across the white floor like blood." "I'm so sorry," I said immediately, dropping to my knees to try to clean it up. "I'm so sorry, I wasn't paying attention." "Pearl, just," Jennifer started, but I could hear the exasperation in her voice. "I'll clean it up, I grabbed paper towels from the counter and started frantically wiping. "Mom, get up." Michael had appeared in the doorway. "You're making it worse." I looked down. He was right. I was just smearing the cranberry sauce around, making the stain bigger. "I'm sorry," I said again, my voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." "It's fine," Jennifer said, but her tone said otherwise. Why don't you just go sit down? Please." I stood up, my knees aching, my hands sticky with cranberry sauce. The three women were looking at me with expressions that ranged from annoyance to pity. I should probably go, I said. I should just go home. Don't be ridiculous, Michael said. It's just a spill, Mom. Go wash your hands and come watch TV with us. But I could see it in all their faces. I was a disruption, an inconvenience, problem. I went to the hall bathroom to wash my hands. The bathroom was as perfect as the rest of the house. Monogrammed hand towels, expensive soap, fresh flowers. I washed my hands carefully, not wanting to stain anything else. That's when I heard them. The door hadn't closed all the way, and voices were carrying from the kitchen. Jennifer's voice, clear and sharp. I don't know why she insists on coming to these things. She never fits in. She means well, Marissa said, but there was laughter in her voice. She's just, she always brings trouble, Patricia said, and those 4 words stopped my heart. Even when she's trying to help, she just makes things worse. Remember last Christmas when she gave the children those loud toys? And last Easter when she showed up in that awful outfit? And now this. She's Michael's mother, Jennifer said with a sigh. What can I do? But honestly, sometimes I think family gatherings would be so much easier without her. The other women murmured in agreement. I stood there frozen, my heart pounding, tears burning behind my eyes. She always brings trouble. 65 years of bending, of trying, of swallowing my pride and my hurt and my own needs, and this was what they thought of me. Not that I was kind or loving or devoted to my grandchildren. Not that I'd raised a successful son or spent 40 years saving lives as a nurse or survived the death of my husband with grace. No. I was troubled. I was the problem. I was the person who would make their gatherings easier by simply not existing. Something inside me broke. Or maybe something inside me finally, blessedly, healed. I walked back to the kitchen. All 3 women looked up, and I saw the moment they realized I'd heard them. Patricia's face went pale. Marissa looked away. Jennifer's expression flickered with something that might have been guilt before settling into defiance. I didn't say a word. I walked to the counter, picked up my barely touched green bean casserole, and put it back in my carrier. Pearl, Jennifer started. I held up my hand. Don't. I walked to the coat closet, retrieved my coat and purse and headed for the door. Michael appeared from the den. Mom? Where are you going? Home, I said simply. But it's only 7 o'clock. We were going to watch a movie and... I'm going home, Michael. Did something happen? He looked genuinely confused. Is this about cranberry sauce? Mom, it's not a big deal. It's not about the cranberry sauce. Jennifer had followed him into the foyer. Pearl, you're being dramatic. Can we just... I heard you, I said quietly. In the kitchen. I heard what you said about me. What you all said. The color drained from Jennifer's face. Michael looked between us, clearly lost. Mom, what are you talking about? But I was done explaining. Done defending. Done trying to make people see my worth when they'd already decided I had none. I'm going home, I repeated. Happy Thanksgiving. And I walked out. The drive home was a blur of tears and disbelief and something else, something that felt almost like freedom. My hand shook on the steering wheel, and I had to pull over twice because I couldn't see through my tears. But even through the pain, I felt a strange lightness, as if I'd been carrying a massive weight for so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. She always brings trouble. The words played on a loop in my head. But now, sitting alone in my car with no one to perform for, I felt something new stirring alongside the hurt. Anger. Real, burning anger at the unfairness of it all. What trouble had I brought? The trouble of loving my son and my grandchildren? The trouble of showing up, year after year, to family gatherings where I was tolerated but never truly welcome? The trouble of trying to have a relationship with my grandchildren despite Jennifer's constant subtle sabotage? By the time I got home, the anger had grown, and so had my resolve. I wasn't going to chase them. I wasn't going to call and apologize for leaving, or try to explain, or beg them to understand. For the first time in my life, I was going to let them come to me. If they wanted to. My phone started ringing before I'd even gotten my coat off. Michael. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. And again. I turned it off. I sat in my quiet house. The modest, simple house that was paid off and full of memories, and I cried. I cried for the years I'd spent trying to earn approval from people who were never going to give it. I cried for my grandchildren, who were being raised to see me as lesser. I cried for my son, who'd watched his wife diminish his mother and said nothing. But mostly I cried tears of release. Because somewhere in that kitchen, listening to those women talk about me like I was a burden to be managed, I'd finally seen the truth. I'd been playing a rigged game. No matter what I did, no matter how hard I tried, I was never going to be enough for Jennifer because Jennifer didn't want me to be enough. She wanted me to be less than, so she could feel more than. And I was done playing. I finally turned my phone back on around midnight. 17 missed calls. 12 voicemails. 23 text messages. Most were from Michael. Mom, please call me. I don't understand what happened. Jennifer said there was a misunderstanding. Can we talk? You're being unreasonable. It's Thanksgiving. Family is supposed to be together. That last one made me laugh, a bitter sound in the dark quiet of my bedroom. Family is supposed to be together. Where was that sentiment when I was sitting alone at the end of the table? When I was standing invisible in the living room? When his wife was saying I brought trouble? There was one text from Rebecca, timestamp 10:47 p.m. Michael called. Said you left Thanksgiving early. Are you okay? Call me when you can. I love you. I called her. She answered on the first ring. Mom. Oh, thank God. Are you all right? And just like that, the tears came again. I told her everything, not just about Thanksgiving but about all of it. The years of small cuts, the casual dismissals, the constant feeling of being tolerated rather than loved. She listened, and I could hear her crying too. Mom, she said when I finished. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you say something sooner? I didn't want to be dramatic, I said. I didn't want to cause problems. I thought if I just tried harder. Stop, Rebecca said firmly. Stop right there. You've been trying harder your whole life. You tried hard for Grandma and Grandpa. You tried hard for Dad's family. You tried hard raising us. When does it end? When do you get to just exist without having to earn your place? Her words hit me like a revelation. When did I get to just exist? Jennifer is a snob, Rebecca continued. I've been saying this for years. She treats you like you're beneath her, and Michael lets her. I've watched it happen, and I'm ashamed I didn't say more. I kept telling myself it wasn't my place, that I lived too far away to know the full situation. But I knew. And I didn't speak up loudly enough. It's not your responsibility. You're my mother. Of course it's my responsibility. Just like it was Michael's responsibility to stand up for you, and he didn't. I'm furious with him, Mom. I'm absolutely furious. We talked for another hour. She made me promise not to apologize, not to back down, not to pretend it was okay. You set a boundary tonight, she said. Probably the first real boundary you've ever set with them. Now you have to hold it. After we hung up, I sat in the dark, thinking about boundaries. I'd spent so much of my life being flexible, accommodating, understanding. I'd prided myself on being easygoing, on not being one of those difficult people who made demands or caused scenes. But flexibility without boundaries wasn't a virtue. It was just another way of disappearing. The next morning, I woke up to find my phone flooded with messages again. But this time, there was one that made my blood run cold. It was from Jennifer. Pearl, I think we need to clear the air. You obviously misunderstood what you heard yesterday. I was actually defending you to my mother, who made some unkind comments. I'm disappointed that you would leave like that without even giving me a chance to explain. You hurt Michael very much, and you upset the children. I hope you'll apologize so we can move past this. I read it 3 times, my hands shaking with rage. She was gaslighting me, taking what I'd heard with my own ears and trying to twist it into something else. And now I was the one who needed to apologize? I'd hurt Michael? I'd upset the children? I blocked her number. 30 minutes later, Michael called. Mom, what the hell? Jennifer is in tears. She said you blocked her. I did. Why would you do that? She's trying to make things right. Michael, I heard what she said. I heard all of them. Your wife, her mother, and her sister-in-law were discussing how I always bring trouble, and how family gatherings would be easier without me. Those were the exact words. Silence. Then, Mom, you must have misheard. Don't, I said, my voice harder than I'd ever used with him. Don't tell me I misheard. Don't tell me I misunderstood. I know what I heard, and I'm not going to let you gaslight me the way your wife is trying to. Jennifer said she was defending you. Then why didn't she come after me? Why didn't she immediately correct her mother and sister-in-law? Why did the conversation just continue on like it was perfectly acceptable? More silence. Michael, I need you to really think about something. When was the last time your wife said something genuinely kind about me? When was the last time I was included in a family activity without it being a duty or an obligation? When was the last time I felt truly welcome in your home? Mom, you're always welcome. Am I? Because yesterday I sat alone for an hour before dinner. No one spoke to me at the table. No one ate the food I brought. And then I was told I bring trouble. So please explain to me how that equals welcome. I could hear him struggling for words. Jennifer. She has high standards. She comes from a different background. It's not personal. It's absolutely personal, Michael. And the fact that you can't see that breaks my heart. So what do you want from me? His voice had an edge now, defensive. You want me to divorce my wife? You want me to choose between you and her? I don't want you to choose, I said quietly. I want you to stand up for me. I want you to tell your wife that her treatment of me is unacceptable. I want you to include me in your life because you want to, not because you feel obligated. But if you can't do those things, then yes, you're choosing. You've been choosing Jennifer over me for years. I'm just finally seeing it clearly. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, sweetheart. I learned that a long time ago. But I also learned that I don't have to accept being treated poorly in the name of keeping the peace. Fine, he said, and I could hear the anger in his voice now. Fine. If that's how you feel, then maybe you should take some space. Maybe we all need some space. The words felt like a slap, but I kept my voice steady. Maybe we do. He hung up without saying goodbye. I sat there staring at my phone, feeling like my heart was being ripped in two. This was my son, my baby boy, who I'd rocked to sleep and nursed through illnesses and cheered for at baseball games, and helped through breakups and college stress and early career struggles. The boy who'd held my hand at his father's funeral, and told me we'd get through it together. And now he was choosing his wife's comfort over his mother's dignity. But I couldn't back down. I couldn't apologize for finally standing up for myself. Because if I did, I'd be teaching my grandchildren that it was okay to be treated this way. That women should shrink themselves to make others comfortable. That love meant accepting disrespect. I'd rather have them remember me as the grandmother who disappeared than the grandmother who taught them that abuse, even subtle, polite abuse, was acceptable. The next few days were the hardest of my life. Harder in some ways than losing Richard because at least that grief had been clean. This grief was complicated by anger and confusion and guilt. My phone kept ringing. Jennifer called from different numbers, her mother's phone, her sister-in-law's phone, leaving long voicemails about how I was tearing the family apart, how I was being selfish, how I was choosing pride over my grandchildren. Michael sent texts that alternated between angry and pleading. The kids are asking about you. Emma wants to know if you're mad at her. You're really going to throw away your relationship with your grandchildren over one comment you probably misheard? Jennifer's mother is sick over this. She says she never meant anything negative. Each message was designed to make me feel guilty, to make me question myself. And they worked. I spent hours second-guessing everything, wondering if I'd overreacted, if I should just apologize and go back to the way things were. But then I'd remember sitting at that table, invisible and unwanted. I'd remember the laughter in their voices as they discuss what a problem I was. I'd remember years of small humiliations, of being made to feel less than. And I'd remember Rebecca's words. When do you get to just exist without having to earn your place? Rebecca called me every day, sometimes twice a day. She was furious with Michael, had apparently had several heated phone conversations with him that he wasn't telling me about. He's being a coward, she said bluntly. He knows Jennifer treats you terribly. He's known for years. But it's easier to make you bend than to confront his wife. On the 5th day after Thanksgiving, something shifted. I got a text from Emma, my oldest grandchild. Grandma, can I call you? My heart leapt. Of course, sweetheart. Anytime. She called from a friend's phone. I could tell immediately that she was crying. Grandma, I'm so sorry. I heard Mom talking to Dad. I heard what she said at Thanksgiving. I'm so sorry. Emma, sweetheart, this isn't your fault. But it is. I could have talked to you at dinner. I could have sat with you. Mom always makes it seem like you're weird or embarrassing, and I believed her. But you're not. You're the best grandmother ever, and I miss you. I was crying now too. I miss you too, baby. So much. Mom said you're the one who left. That you chose to walk away from the family. But that's not true, is it? She made you leave. She's always been mean to you, and I never said anything because I didn't want her to be mean to me too. The honesty of that statement, the painful, awful honesty, broke something open in my chest. Emma, listen to me. None of this is your responsibility. You're 13 years old. It's not your job to police your mother's behavior or to protect me. That's your father's job and mine. Do you understand? But I should have been nicer to you. I should have. You were a child following your mother's lead. That's normal. That's what children do. I don't blame you for that, not for 1 second. Can I see you? She asked. Can I come visit? Does your mother know you're calling me? No. She'd kill me if she knew. She's been telling everyone you had some kind of breakdown, and that we need to give you space until you get help. White-hot rage flooded through me. A breakdown. She was telling people I'd had a breakdown. Emma, I did not have a breakdown. I walked away from a situation where I was being disrespected. That's not a mental health crisis. That's self-respect. I know. I told Dad that and he got mad at me. He said I don't understand adult situations. I'm so sorry you're in the middle of this. Grandma, can I tell you something? Of course. I'm kind of glad you left. I'm glad someone finally stood up to Mom. She's like this with everyone. If she decides she doesn't like you, she makes your life miserable until you either submit or leave. She did it to Dad's best friend from college. She did it to our last nanny. And she's been doing it to you for years. I watched it happen and I pretended not to notice because it was easier. I'm ashamed of that. Oh, Emma. No, I am. I'm ashamed. And I'm going to do better. Sophie and Jackson too, we've been talking about it. We want to see you even if Mom says no. My heart was so full I thought it might burst. I want to see you too, sweetheart. But I also don't want to cause problems for you at home. Grandma, there are already problems at home. They just used to be hidden and now they're not. And maybe that's better. Maybe things needed to break so they could be fixed the right way. 13 years old and she had more wisdom than most adults I knew. We talked for a while longer, and she promised to call again soon. After we hung up, I sat in my living room, feeling the first real hope I'd felt since Thanksgiving. My grandchildren knew the truth. At least one of them did, and she was on my side. But the situation was about to get much more complicated. The next morning I got a certified letter. Inside was a document from a lawyer, Jennifer's lawyer. It was a formal letter informing me that I was to have no contact with the minor children Emma, Sophie and Jackson Winters without explicit permission from their parents. Any attempt to contact them would be considered harassment and could result in legal action, including a restraining order. I read it 3 times, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper. She was threatening me with legal action. She was using my grandchildren as weapons. She was trying to cut me off from them completely, and she was using the law to do it. Before I continue with what happened next, I need to pause here. If you're watching this and you've ever been in a situation where someone weaponized children against you, where family became a battlefield, please subscribe to Family Tales and leave a comment. These stories need to be told. The manipulation needs to be exposed. And you need to know that you're not crazy, you're not overreacting, and you're not alone. I called Rebecca immediately. She's threatening me with a restraining order. What? On what grounds? She's claiming that any contact with the grandchildren without permission constitutes harassment. Rebecca, Emma called me yesterday. She used a friend's phone. If Jennifer finds out, Mom, she can't actually get a restraining order against you for being a grandmother. This is a scare tactic. She's trying to intimidate you into backing down. Well, it's working. Don't let it. We need to fight this. I'm calling a lawyer I know. She specializes in grandparents' rights. And Mom? I'm coming home. Rebecca, you don't need to. Yes, I do. This has gone far enough. Jennifer doesn't get to bully you and then threaten you with legal action when you stand up for yourself. I'm booking a flight today. True to her word, Rebecca arrived 2 days later. I picked her up from the airport, and the moment I saw her, I started crying. She held me right there in the arrivals area, and for the first time since Thanksgiving, I felt like I wasn't alone.
We're going to fix this, she said firmly. But first, you need to understand something. This isn't about fixing your relationship with Jennifer. That ship has sailed. This is about protecting your relationship with your grandchildren and making sure Michael understands the choice he's making. She'd already contacted a lawyer, a woman named Diane Morrison, who specialized in family law. We met with her the next day. Diane was in her 50s, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense. She read Jennifer's letter and actually laughed. This is theatrics, she said. Intimidation disguised as legal action. She has no grounds for a restraining order. You haven't threatened anyone. You haven't shown up at their house uninvited since Thanksgiving. You haven't done anything that could remotely be considered harassment. But can she legally keep me from seeing my grandchildren? I asked. Diane's expression grew more serious. Unfortunately, in most states, parents have the legal right to determine who has access to their children. Grandparents' rights laws exist, but they're limited and difficult to enforce. They usually require proof that denying access causes harm to the children. So she can just cut me off? Just like that. Legally, yes. Morally and ethically? That's a different question. But Pearl, I want you to think carefully about whether you want to pursue legal action. Family court is brutal. It's expensive, it's time-consuming, and it often makes bad situations worse. Sometimes the better path is to keep the door open and wait. Wait for what? For your grandchildren to get older. For your son to wake up. For the situation to change. Emma is 13 in 5 years. She'll be an adult and can have a relationship with you regardless of what her mother wants. Sophie and Jackson will follow. And in the meantime, you document everything, you keep yourself available, and you don't give Jennifer any ammunition to use against you. It wasn't the answer I wanted, but it was the answer I needed. We spent the next few days strategizing. Rebecca reached out to Michael, and they had what she later described as the worst conversation of my life. He's completely under her thumb, Rebecca told me, pacing my living room. He kept defending her, making excuses. He said you were being unreasonable, that families have disagreements, and you should just apologize and move on. I asked him point blank, did Jennifer say Mom brings trouble? And you know what he said? He said even if she did, she was probably just venting, and everyone vents about their in-laws. Maybe she was just venting, I said quietly. No. Rebecca's voice was fierce. Venting is, my mother-in-law drives me crazy sometimes. Venting is not, she always brings trouble and family gatherings would be easier without her. That's not venting, Mom. That's cruelty. And the fact that Michael can't see the difference tells me everything I need to know about his marriage. I felt a pang of sorrow for my son. How had he become this person? The boy I'd raised had been kind, thoughtful, aware of other people's feelings. When had he learned to justify cruelty as long as it wasn't his own? But I knew the answer. He'd learned it slowly, over 15 years of marriage to a woman who demanded he choose her comfort over everyone else's dignity. He learned it by watching her systematically diminish every person who didn't fit her vision of how the world should be, and by choosing not to intervene. He'd learned it by being a coward. The thought broke my heart, but it was true.
A week after Rebecca arrived, something happened that changed everything. I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, worried it might be Jennifer calling from yet another phone, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Winters? A woman's voice, professional and unfamiliar. Yes. My name is Carol Henderson. I'm Emma's school counselor. I'm calling because Emma came to see me today, and she's quite upset. She mentioned that there's been a family conflict, and she's worried about you. She asked me to reach out. My heart clenched. Is Emma okay? Physically, yes. Emotionally, she's struggling. Mrs. Winters, I need to be direct with you. Emma has told me some concerning things about her home environment, particularly regarding how her mother speaks about you and treats you. She's also mentioned that she's being prevented from contacting you, which is causing her significant distress. I didn't ask her to contact you, I said quickly. I would never put her in that position. I know. She made that very clear. She said you've been nothing but supportive and that you've told her multiple times that the situation isn't her responsibility. But Mrs. Winters, I'm mandated to report certain things, and while what Emma has described doesn't rise to the level of abuse, it does concern me. A pattern of parental alienation, deliberately damaging a child's relationship with another family member, can be psychologically harmful. What are you saying? I'm saying that I'd like to schedule a meeting with Emma's parents to discuss the family situation and its impact on Emma's well-being, and I'd like your permission to mention that I've spoken with you. I thought about Jennifer's threat of legal action. I thought about making things worse. But then I thought about Emma, 13 years old, and caught in the middle of an adult conflict that she should never have had to witness. Yes, I said. You have my permission. 2 days later, all hell broke loose. Michael called me, and he was angrier than I'd ever heard him. What did you say to Emma's school counselor? Nothing. She called me. Emma went to her on her own. Bullshit. You put her up to this. You're using my daughter to get back at Jennifer. Michael, stop. Just stop. I did not tell Emma to do anything. She's upset because she's watching her family fall apart, and she had the courage to reach out to a trusted adult. That's what we're supposed to teach children to do. The counselor is saying that Jennifer is engaging in parental alienation. Do you have any idea how serious that accusation is? Do you know what that could do to Jennifer's reputation? Maybe Jennifer should have thought about that before she decided to cut me out of her children's lives. You cut yourself out, he shouted. You walked out on Thanksgiving. You refused to answer calls. You blocked Jennifer. All of this is your fault. I walked out after I heard your wife and her family saying I bring trouble, and that gatherings would be easier without me. I set a boundary. That's not the same as abandoning the family. God, Mom, you're so dramatic. Jennifer explained that she was defending you. Then why did Emma hear the same thing I did? Why is your 13-year-old daughter so upset by her mother's behavior toward me that she went to a school counselor? Michael, when are you going to stop making excuses and actually look at what's happening? What's happening is that you're tearing this family apart. No, I said quietly. What's happening is that you're being forced to see what's been happening for years, and you don't like it. It was easier when I just absorbed the insults and stayed quiet. But I'm not doing that anymore. He hung up on me. Again. But this time I didn't cry. Because something else had happened that same day. Sophie, my middle grandchild, had somehow gotten my email address. She sent me a message. Dear Grandma Pearl, I'm sorry I didn't talk to you at Thanksgiving. Emma told me what happened and what she heard Mom say. I feel really bad. I want to see you, but Mom says we can't. She says you're trying to turn us against her, but that's not true. Emma didn't say anything bad about Mom. She just said she missed you and was worried about you. I miss you too. I miss how you used to make cookies with us, and how you always listened when I talked about my friends, and how you never made me feel stupid when I didn't understand something. Mom is really mad right now. She says you're trying to destroy our family. But I don't think that's true. I think she's just mad that people are seeing how she treats you. I love you. Please don't give up on us. Love, Sophie. I read that email 10 times, tears streaming down my face. My grandchildren saw it. They understood. And they were on my side. I wrote back immediately. My darling Sophie, I could never, ever give up on you. Not you, not Emma, not Jackson. You three are the lights of my life, and nothing, absolutely nothing, will ever change that. I want you to know that this situation is not your fault. It's not Emma's fault for speaking to her counselor. It's not your fault for missing me. None of this is any of your doing, and I don't want you to feel responsible for fixing it. Your mother is angry, and that's understandable. Change is hard, especially when it means confronting uncomfortable truths. But her anger doesn't mean you have to choose sides. You can love both of us. You should love both of us. I'm always here for you. Always. Even if we can't see each other right now. Even if we can't talk. You are in my heart every single moment of every single day. I love you more than words can say. Grandma Pearl. Rebecca found me crying at my computer and read the exchange. Mom, she said softly, you're doing the right thing. These kids need to know that someone in their family values honesty and boundaries and self-respect. But what if Jennifer finds out they're contacting me? What if she makes their lives even harder? Then they'll learn another important lesson, that standing up for what's right sometimes comes with consequences, and that those consequences are worth it. You can't protect them from their mother's behavior, but you can show them that there's another way to be. The meeting with the school counselor happened 3 days later. I wasn't invited, but Emma called me afterward from her counselor's office with the counselor's permission. Grandma, it was awful, she said, her voice thick with tears. Mom yelled at Mrs. Henderson. She said the school had no right to interfere in family matters. Dad just sat there. He didn't say anything. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. But Mrs. Henderson didn't back down. She said that Emma's well-being was her concern, and that she'd observed concerning behavior patterns. She said that healthy families don't cut off grandparents without serious cause, and that using children as weapons in adult conflicts is harmful. What did your parents say? Mom said you were dangerous, that you were unstable, that you'd been acting erratically since Grandpa died, and that they were trying to protect us. Grandma, I couldn't stay quiet. I told them that was a lie. I said you were the most stable person I knew, and that the only reason we weren't seeing you was because Mom didn't like you. My heart stopped. Emma. I know I probably shouldn't have said it. Mom is furious. She grounded me for a month. But Grandma, someone had to say it. Someone had to tell the truth. I'm so proud of you, I said, my voice breaking. So incredibly proud. But I also need you to be safe. If standing up for me puts you in danger. I'm not in danger. Mom is just mad. But she can't erase the truth. Mrs. Henderson is documenting everything. And she said if things get worse, she might have to make a report to social services. That got my attention. Emma, is there something you're not telling me? Is your mother hurting you? Not physically. But she says really mean things when she's mad. About me, about Sophie and Jackson. She tells us we're ungrateful, that we don't appreciate everything she does for us. She says if we loved her, we'd stop making trouble. It's like how she talks about you. Like we're problems to be managed instead of people. The pattern was clear. Jennifer didn't just treat me this way. She treated anyone who didn't perfectly conform to her expectations this way, including her own children. Emma, I need you to do something for me. I need you to start writing things down. When your mother says something hurtful, write it down. The date, what she said, who else was there. Can you do that? Why? Because if things escalate, if we need to protect you and your brother and sister, having a record will be important. But keep it somewhere she won't find it. And Emma, if you're ever scared, if you're ever in danger, you call 911. Do you understand? I understand. After we hung up, I sat with Rebecca and told her everything. This is bigger than you now, Rebecca said. This is about those kids. Mom, I think we need to seriously consider fighting for custody or at least visitation rights. Diane said that would be hard. That was before Emma went to a school counselor. That was before we knew that Jennifer is emotionally abusing her own children. Mom, we have grounds now. Real grounds. But the cost. I'll pay for it, Rebecca said firmly. I'll sell the farm if I have to. Those kids need someone to fight for them, and if Michael won't do it, then we will. I looked at my daughter, my fierce, loyal daughter who'd built a good life 3,000 miles away, and was willing to risk it all to protect her nieces and nephew. Okay, I said. Let's fight. The next morning we met with Diane again and laid out everything. The emails from Sophie, the call from Emma, the school counselor's concerns. Diane listened carefully, taking notes. This changes things, she said finally. Emotional abuse is hard to prove, but with documented concerns from a school counselor and statements from the children themselves, we have something to work with. I can file a petition for grandparent visitation. It won't be easy and it won't be quick, but we have a real case now. What happens when we file? Jennifer and Michael will be notified. They'll have a chance to respond. There will be a hearing where a judge will determine whether visitation is in the children's best interest. The school counselor will likely be called to testify. The children may be as well, depending on their ages and the judge's discretion. I don't want to put them through that, I said immediately. I know. But Pearl, they're already going through it. Filing this petition won't create trauma. It will shine a light on trauma that's already happening. And sometimes that's the only way to make it stop. We filed the petition 2 days later. The reaction was swift and brutal. Michael showed up at my house at 7 in the morning the day after we filed. Rebecca answered the door. I need to talk to Mom, he said, his voice cold. She's not seeing you until you can be civil, Rebecca replied. This is between me and my mother. No, it's between our mother and her grandchildren. You lost the right to mediate this when you chose your wife over basic human decency. Rebecca. I appeared behind her. It's okay, Rebecca. Let him in. Michael stepped into my living room, and I barely recognized him. His face was haggard, his eyes red-rimmed. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. You filed for visitation, he said. You're actually taking us to court. I'm fighting for the right to have a relationship with my grandchildren. Yes. Do you have any idea what this is doing to my marriage? Jennifer is devastated. She feels attacked. Her parents are talking about getting involved. Good, I said calmly. Let them get involved. Let everyone see what's been happening. Nothing has been happening. You're making up this whole narrative where Jennifer is some kind of villain when all she did was make one comment that you took completely out of context. Michael, sit down. Something in my tone made him obey. I'm going to tell you some things, I said. And you're going to listen. Really listen. Can you do that? He nodded, though his jaw was tight. For 15 years, I have watched your wife diminish me. Small comments about my clothes, my house, my cooking. Being excluded from family activities. Being seated at the end of the table at gatherings. Having my gifts dismissed. Being made to feel like an obligation rather than a loved family member. I swallowed all of it because I didn't want to cause problems. Mom, I'm not finished. On Thanksgiving, I heard Jennifer, her mother, and her sister-in-law discussing how I always bring trouble, and how gatherings would be easier without me. That wasn't out of context. That wasn't one comment. That was the culmination of years of disrespect. And when I walked out, I wasn't abandoning the family. I was finally standing up for myself. Jennifer explained. No, she lied. And you believed her because it was easier than confronting her. Just like you've believed every excuse she's made for her behavior over the years. But Michael, this isn't just about me anymore. Emma is so upset that she went to a school counselor. Sophie is emailing me in secret because she misses me. Your children are suffering because of the example you and Jennifer are setting. They're fine. Are they? Emma told me that Jennifer says mean things to them when she's angry. That she makes them feel like problems to be managed. Does that sound fine to you? For the first time, Michael looked uncertain. Your daughter stood up to Jennifer in a meeting with her school counselor. She defended me, and she told the truth about what's been happening. And Jennifer grounded her for a month. Not for lying, for telling the truth. What does that tell you? It tells me that Emma was disrespectful. It tells you that Jennifer punishes honesty. Just like she's been punishing me for finally being honest about how she treats me. Michael stood up abruptly. I can't do this. I can't sit here and listen to you attack my wife. I'm not attacking her. I'm telling you the truth. But if you can't hear the difference, then maybe you need to ask yourself why. He headed for the door, then turned back. If you go through with this, if you pursue this legal action, you're going to lose. Jennifer has resources, her family has resources. They'll bury you in legal fees. They'll make you look unstable. They'll win, and you'll have nothing. Maybe, I said quietly. Or maybe I'll lose the court case but win something more important. Maybe my grandchildren will see that someone loved them enough to fight for them. Maybe they'll learn that standing up for yourself is worth the risk. And maybe, just maybe, someday you'll wake up and realize what you've become. He left without another word. Rebecca had been listening from the kitchen. She came in and hugged me. You were incredible, she said. I don't feel incredible. I feel like I just lost my son. No, she said firmly. He lost you. Years ago. You're just finally seeing it. The next few weeks were a blur of legal proceedings. Diane filed all the necessary paperwork. Jennifer and Michael retained their own lawyer, an expensive one from her father's law firm. The battle lines were drawn, but something else was happening too. The truth was coming out. Emma's school counselor filed a report with social services expressing concern about the children's emotional environment. It wasn't enough to warrant removing them from the home, but it was enough to trigger an investigation. Sophie and Jackson both started reaching out to me more. Sophie through email, Jackson through messages in his video games. We both played the same online game, and I taught him how when he was younger. They told me things were tense at home, that Jennifer and Michael were fighting more, that Jennifer kept saying I was trying to destroy the family, but they also told me something else. They were glad I was fighting. They said it made them feel like someone cared about them enough to risk everything. And slowly, very slowly, things began to shift. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks before Christmas. Diane prepared me extensively, going over what questions I might be asked, how to stay calm, what to expect. Jennifer's lawyer is going to try to paint you as unstable, she warned. They'll bring up that you walked out on Thanksgiving. They'll probably try to suggest you're having mental health issues related to your husband's death. You need to stay calm, stay honest, and don't let them bait you into anger. I can do that, I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. The day of the hearing arrived. Rebecca came with me for support, though she wouldn't be allowed in the courtroom. We arrived early and sat in the hallway outside the courtroom waiting. Michael and Jennifer arrived with their lawyer, a sharp-dressed man in his 50s who barely glanced at us. Jennifer looked immaculate as always, every hair in place, her outfit expensive and tasteful. She didn't look at me at all. Michael looked miserable. We were called into the courtroom. The judge was a woman in her early 60s with kind eyes but a stern expression. Everyone took their seats. Jennifer's lawyer spoke first, painting me as an unstable woman who'd abandoned her family over a perceived slight, who was now trying to manipulate her grandchildren and damage their parents' marriage. He made me sound irrational, vindictive, dangerous. Then Diane spoke. She laid out the pattern of behavior, the years of exclusion, the overheard comments, Jennifer's threat of legal action, the school counselor's concerns. She presented emails from Sophie, documented conversations with Emma, statements from the counselor. Then it was time for testimony. Jennifer went first. She was poised, articulate, convincing. She said she'd always tried to include me but that I was difficult, that I refused to respect boundaries, that I'd become obsessed with seeing the children after the Thanksgiving incident. I've tried to be understanding, she said, her voice breaking slightly. I know she's grieving her husband, but her behavior has become concerning. She's turning my children against me, filling their heads with lies about me. It was a masterful performance. Then it was my turn. I took the stand, my hands shaking. Diane asked me to describe my relationship with my grandchildren before Thanksgiving. I talked about the babysitting, the school events, the gradual exclusion over the years. Then she asked me to describe what happened on Thanksgiving. I took a deep breath and told the truth. All of it. The feeling of being invisible, the spilled cranberry sauce, the overhead conversation. My voice shook, but I kept going. I didn't storm out in anger, I said. I left because I finally understood that I wasn't wanted, and I couldn't keep pretending that was okay. Jennifer's lawyer cross-examined me. He was brutal, suggesting I'd misheard, misunderstood, overreacted. Isn't it true that you've been depressed since your husband's death? I've been grieving, yes. That's normal. And isn't it true that grief can sometimes cause people to perceive things that aren't really there? I know what I heard. But you can't be certain. I am certain. He tried to rattle me for 20 minutes, but I held firm. Because I was telling the truth. And the truth doesn't change no matter how many ways someone tries to twist it. Then the judge did something unexpected. She asked to speak to the children. Emma, Sophie, and Jackson were brought in one at a time. The judge spoke to each of them privately in her chambers. I wasn't allowed to hear what was said. We waited for over an hour. When the judge returned, her expression was unreadable. She asked to see Michael alone. Another 30 minutes passed. Finally, everyone was called back into the courtroom. The judge looked tired. I've heard from all parties, she said. I've reviewed the documentation. I've spoken to the children and to Mr. Winters privately. This is a complicated situation, and there's clearly hurt on all sides. My heart sank. She was going to rule against me. However, the judge continued, I am deeply concerned by what I've heard from the children. All three of them expressed a strong desire to maintain a relationship with their grandmother. All three of them described feeling caught in the middle of an adult conflict. And all three of them, when asked directly, said they did not feel that their grandmother posed any danger to them whatsoever. I saw Jennifer stiffen. I am also concerned by the school counselor's report and by Mrs. Jennifer Winter's response to it. Grounding a child for speaking honestly to a counselor about family stress is, in my view, punitive and counterproductive. Jennifer's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, if I may. You may not. The judge's voice was firm. I'm not finished. Mr. Winters, would you please stand? Michael stood looking pale. Mr. Winters, I asked you some difficult questions in my chambers. I asked you if you believed your mother posed a danger to your children, and you said no. I asked you if you believed she loved them, and you said yes. I asked you why, if both those things are true, you're supporting your wife's decision to cut off contact. Do you remember what you told me? Michael's voice was barely audible. I said I was trying to keep the peace. Exactly. You're trying to keep the peace. But Mr. Winters, peace achieved by silencing reasonable dissent isn't peace. It's control. And based on everything I've heard today, I believe that's what's happening in your home. The courtroom was absolutely silent. I am granting Mrs. Pearl Winters visitation rights, the judge said. 1 weekend a month, plus alternating major holidays. This is a court order. Any violation of this order will be taken seriously. I couldn't breathe. She'd granted it. She'd actually granted it. Jennifer's face had gone white with rage. Furthermore, the judge continued, I am ordering family counseling for Mr. and Mrs. Michael Winters and their children. The children need a safe space to express their feelings about this situation, and the parents need to learn healthier ways of handling family conflict. Your Honor, Jennifer's lawyer said, This is my ruling, the judge said firmly, and it's final. Court is adjourned. I sat there stunned as people began to gather their things. Diane was smiling, actually smiling. Rebecca rushed in from the hallway and grabbed me in a fierce hug. Michael stood frozen, looking lost. And Jennifer looked at me with such pure hatred that I actually stepped back. This isn't over, she hissed as she passed me. You'll regret this. But I wouldn't. Not for a second. Outside the courtroom, Emma, Sophie and Jackson were waiting with the social worker. The moment they saw me, all three of them rushed forward. Grandma! Emma threw her arms around me. Sophie and Jackson followed. I held them, crying, unable to believe this was real. The judge said we can see you, Sophie said. Really see you. Not just secretly. She said what Mom did was wrong, Jackson added. She said you're not the problem. I looked at Michael over their heads. He was watching us, his expression unreadable. Can we go to your house? Emma asked. Can we go right now? I looked at the social worker, who nodded. You're allowed supervised visitation until the formal schedule is set up. I can supervise for today if you'd like. Please, I said. Please, yes. We went to my house, me, Rebecca, the three kids, and the social worker. We ordered pizza. We played games. We talked and laughed, and for the first time in months I felt whole. The kids told me about school, about their friends, about everything I'd missed. They asked about my life, about Rebecca's farm, about their grandfather. We looked at photo albums. I showed them pictures of Michael when he was their age. Dad looks so happy in these, Emma said softly. He doesn't look like that anymore. Change is hard, I said carefully, especially when it means admitting you've been wrong about something. Do you think he'll ever admit it? Sophie asked. I don't know, sweetheart. I hope so. But even if he doesn't, you three will always have me. That's what today proved. When it was time for them to go, all three of them hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. I love you, Grandma, Emma whispered. Thank you for fighting for us. I love you too. All of you. Always. The social worker drove them home. Rebecca and I sat in my living room, exhausted but triumphant. You did it, she said. You actually did it. We did it, I corrected. I couldn't have done this without you. So what now? Now we rebuild. Slowly. Carefully. And we hope that someday, Michael wakes up and realizes what he almost lost. 3 days after the hearing, Michael came to my house alone. He stood on my porch, hands in his pockets, looking like the boy I'd raised instead of the man he'd become. "Can I come in?" he asked. I let him in. We sat in the living room, the same room where he'd told me I'd lose if I pursued legal action. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I'm so sorry, Mom." I waited. The judge, what she said to me in her chambers. She asked me why I was letting this happen. Why I was choosing Jennifer's pride over your dignity and my children's well-being. And I didn't have a good answer. I had excuses but not reasons. "What did you tell her?" I told her the truth. That it was easier to make you bend than to confront Jennifer. That I'd convinced myself you were being dramatic because it meant I didn't have to admit that my wife was cruel. That I'd been a coward for years, and I didn't know how to stop. Tears were streaming down his face now. She told me something I'll never forget. She said, "Your mother is teaching your children how to stand up for themselves. You should be learning the same lesson." And she was right. Emma stood up to Jennifer in that meeting with the counselor. She stood up in court, told the judge the truth even though she knew it would make her mother angry. My 13-year-old daughter has more courage than I do. Michael. No, let me finish. I've been going to therapy since the hearing. Individual therapy. I told Jennifer I needed it, that I needed to figure out why I'd let things get this bad. She's furious about it, but for once I don't care. And Mom, I'm starting to see things clearly for the first time in years. What are you seeing? That Jennifer has been isolating me. From you, from my friends, from anyone who might make me question her. That she uses anger and guilt to control me. That our kids are learning that love means accepting mistreatment. And that if I don't change, I'm going to lose them the same way I almost lost you. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. My therapist says I need to set boundaries with Jennifer. That I need to stand up for myself and for our kids. But Mom, I'm scared. I'm scared of what happens if she doesn't change. I'm scared of what it means for our marriage. I took his hand. I can't tell you what to do, sweetheart. But I can tell you this, you're already changing. The fact that you're here, that you're in therapy, that you're seeing the truth, that's huge. Be patient with yourself. And whatever happens, I'm here. I'm always here. He cried then, really cried like he hadn't let himself cry in years. And I held him like I did when he was small, and I hoped, prayed, that he'd find his way back to the man he was supposed to be. That was 6 months ago. Today I sit in my backyard watching Emma, Sophie and Jackson play with Rebecca's 2 children, who are visiting from Oregon. The sound of their laughter fills the air, and my heart is fuller than it's been in years. Things aren't perfect. Michael is still married to Jennifer, though he's in therapy and working on setting boundaries. Jennifer is furious about the court order and makes visitation as difficult as she legally can. But the kids come to see me 1 weekend a month, and we make the most of every moment. Emma is thriving. She started writing, really writing, and she shares her stories with me. She's thinking about becoming a journalist, someone who tells the truth even when it's hard, she says. Sophie has come out of her shell. She talks more, shares more, trusts more. Last month, she told me that seeing me stand up for myself taught her that she could stand up for herself too. She's been speaking up more at school, at home, with friends. Jackson is still my little buddy. We play video games together, and he tells me about his dreams of becoming an engineer like his grandfather. Michael comes to visit sometimes, usually when Jennifer is out of town. We're rebuilding our relationship slowly. He's not the son I raised yet, but he's getting there. Last week, he told me he's proud of me for not giving up. I thought I was protecting my family by keeping the peace, he said. But you showed me that real protection means standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Rebecca moved back closer to home 3 months ago. She sold her farm in Oregon and bought a smaller property about an hour from me. I realized that being far away meant I could pretend the problems didn't exist, she told me. But you taught me that presence matters. Showing up matters, even when it's uncomfortable. As for Jennifer, she's still angry. She still makes snide comments when she thinks the children can't hear. She still tries to undermine my relationship with them in subtle ways. But here's the thing I've learned. I don't need her approval anymore. I don't need her to like me or respect me or think I'm good enough. I know who I am, and more importantly, my grandchildren know who I am. The family counseling the judge ordered has been eye-opening. The therapist has been documenting patterns of behavior, Jennifer's need to control, Michael's tendency to avoid conflict, the children's stress responses. It's not pleasant, but it's necessary. 2 months ago, the therapist called me and asked if I'd be willing to participate in a session. Jennifer was apparently resistant to the idea, but the therapist felt it was important. Michael agreed, and eventually Jennifer had no choice. That session was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Sitting in a room with Jennifer, with a neutral third party present, and finally speaking all the truths I'd swallowed for 15 years. I talked about the exclusion, the dismissiveness, the casual cruelty. I talked about how it felt to be made to feel less than, to be treated like an obligation rather than a loved family member. Jennifer tried to deflect, to make excuses, to turn it around on me. But the therapist didn't let her. She kept bringing the conversation back to specific behaviors, specific incidents. Mrs. Winters, the therapist said to Jennifer at one point, I've heard you say multiple times that Pearl is too sensitive, that she misinterprets things. But I've also heard from your children that they've witnessed these same behaviors and felt uncomfortable with them. When multiple people who love each other, are telling you the same thing, at what point do you consider that the problem might not be their perception? Jennifer didn't have an answer for that. That session didn't fix everything. Jennifer didn't suddenly become warm and welcoming. But something shifted. Maybe it was having someone objective point out the patterns. Maybe it was realizing that even her own children saw the truth. Maybe it was understanding that she couldn't gaslight everyone forever. She's been less hostile since then. Not kind, but less actively cruel. It's a start. The biggest change has been in my grandchildren. They're more open now, more willing to express their feelings. Emma told me recently that watching me set boundaries taught her that she could do the same. I used to think that if I just made Mom happy, everything would be okay, she said. But then I saw you refuse to accept being treated badly. And I realized that making someone happy isn't the same as being healthy. I can love Mom and still disagree with her. I can respect her and still have my own opinions. At 13, she understood something it took me 71 years to learn. Sophie has started standing up to Jennifer too. Small things but important ones. Saying no when Jennifer tries to schedule every minute of her day. Expressing her own preferences instead of just agreeing with whatever Jennifer suggests. Calling out unkind comments instead of ignoring them. And Jackson, sweet Jackson, told me last month that he wants to be like me when he grows up. Not a grandma, he clarified with a grin. But someone who stands up for what's right even when everyone else is being mean. I think about that moment at Thanksgiving, standing in that kitchen, casserole in hand, hearing those 4 words that changed everything. She always brings trouble. They were right, in a way. I did bring trouble. I brought the trouble of truth into a family built on polite lies. I brought the trouble of boundaries into relationships that relied on one person's endless flexibility. I brought the trouble of self-respect into a dynamic that required my diminishment. And yes, that kind of trouble is necessary. That kind of trouble is healthy. That kind of trouble is love, real love, the kind that demands better for everyone involved. I've learned so much in these past 6 months. I've learned that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. That setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's essential. That the people who truly love you will respect your boundaries, and the people who don't weren't really loving you in the first place. I've learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is to refuse to participate in dysfunction. That silence isn't peace. It's just postponed conflict. That children are always watching, always learning, and they need to see adults who respect themselves. I've learned that court orders and legal action are sometimes necessary, not because they fix everything, but because they create space for healing to happen. That fighting for your relationship with your grandchildren isn't selfish. It's one of the most important things you can do. But most importantly, I've learned that I am enough. Exactly as I am. With my simple house and my thrift store clothes and my traditional recipes and my nursing career and my 71 years of living. I am enough. And I always was. Jennifer's opinion of me never mattered. What mattered was my opinion of myself. And for too long I'd let other people define that. I think about the Pearl who walked into that Thanksgiving gathering, nervous and eager to please, carrying a casserole and hoping for acceptance. She was so tired. Tired of trying, tired of bending, tired of shrinking herself to fit into spaces that were never meant for her. And I think about the Pearl who walked out, casserole in hand, choosing dignity over acceptance. She was scared and hurt and uncertain. But she was also brave. Braver than she knew. I'm grateful to both versions of myself. The one who tried for so long taught me patience and persistence. The one who walked away taught me that sometimes walking away is the bravest thing you can do. If you're watching this and you're in a situation where you feel like the problem, where you're constantly told you're too sensitive or too dramatic or too much, please hear me. You are not the problem. The problem is a system that requires your silence and your smallness to function. The problem is people who need you to believe you're broken so they can avoid examining their own behavior. You are not too much. You are not too sensitive. You are not dramatic for having feelings and expressing them. You are not wrong for wanting to be treated with basic respect and dignity. And if you're in a situation where someone is using your grandchildren or your children as weapons, where access to people you love is being controlled to manipulate you, fight. Fight with everything you have. Not because you'll definitely win in court, but because those children need to see someone fight for them. They need to know that they're worth fighting for. Document everything. Keep records. Reach out to professionals, therapists, counselors, lawyers who specialize in family law. Build your support system. And most importantly, don't give up. I almost gave up so many times. There were nights when I thought about calling Michael, apologizing for everything, begging Jennifer to let me see the children. There were moments when the loneliness felt unbearable, when I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. But then I'd remember why I walked out. I'd remember that I deserved better. I'd remember that my grandchildren were watching, learning how to treat themselves by watching how I treated myself. And I'd find the strength to keep going. To everyone who supported Family Tales, who subscribed and shared these stories and left comments about your own experiences, thank you. Thank you for being part of this community, for bearing witness to these stories, for sharing your own truths. Your stories matter. Your pain matters. Your healing matters. My name is Pearl Winters. I'm 71 years old. And on Thanksgiving Day 2024, I heard 4 words that changed my life. She always brings trouble. They meant it as an insult. But I've come to wear it as a badge of honor. Yes, I bring trouble. I bring the trouble of honesty. I bring the trouble of self-respect. I bring the trouble of boundaries and dignity, and refusing to accept unacceptable behavior. And if that makes me a troublemaker, then so be it. Because the alternative, a lifetime of silence and smallness and swallowed hurt, that's not peace. That's not love. That's not family. Real family makes room for everyone at the table. Real family doesn't require you to shrink yourself to fit. Real family doesn't punish honesty or weaponize children or demand that one person bear all the emotional labor of keeping the peace. Real family is messy and imperfect and sometimes really hard. But it's built on a foundation of mutual respect, of honest communication, of love that doesn't require you to earn it by being less than you are. I'm still building that kind of family with my children and grandchildren. Some days are harder than others. Some relationships are healing faster than others. But we're all trying, all growing, all learning. And that's what I want for everyone watching this. Not perfection. Not a fairy tale ending where everyone suddenly sees the light and apologizes and everything is wonderful. But growth. Healing. The courage to stand up for yourself and the wisdom to know that doing so is an act of love. Love for yourself and love for everyone involved. Before I go, I want to tell you one more thing. Last week, I hosted Thanksgiving at my house for the first time since that day I walked out. Rebecca and her family came. Michael came alone because Jennifer refused to attend. Emma, Sophie, and Jackson came. Some old friends came. My living room was full of people I loved, people who loved me back. And I made green bean casserole. The same recipe I've been making for 45 years. Traditional, simple, unpretentious. Every single person took seconds. Emma raised her glass. She's drinking sparkling cider these days, practicing for the toast she'll give when she's older, and said, "To Grandma Pearl, the bravest person I know. Thank you for teaching us that standing up for ourselves isn't selfish. It's necessary." Everyone clinked glasses. Everyone agreed. And I looked around that table, at the faces of people who valued me, who respected me, who made room for me exactly as I am, And I realized something. This is what I was missing at Jennifer's table. Not fancy dishes or expensive wine or perfect decorations. This, genuine love. Real acceptance. The freedom to exist without performing. So if you're sitting at a table right now where you feel like you have to earn your place, where you're made to feel less than, where your worth is constantly questioned, know that there's another table waiting for you. A table where you're welcomed for who you are, not who someone else wants you to be. You might have to build that table yourself. You might have to walk away from the old table first. It might be scary and lonely and hard, but I promise you it's worth it. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being part of Family Tales. If this story resonated with you, if it helped you see your own situation more clearly, or if it gave you the courage to stand up for yourself, please subscribe to this channel. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment about your own experience. We heal better together. We're stronger together. And your story, whatever it is, matters. Take care of yourselves. Set boundaries. Demand respect. And never, ever let anyone make you feel like you're the problem for refusing to accept poor treatment. My name is Pearl Winters and I always brought trouble. The best kind of trouble. The kind that leads to truth and healing and real genuine love. I hope you bring that kind of trouble too. Until next time, this is Pearl, reminding you that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is pick up your bag and walk out. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to come back until things change. You are worthy. You are enough. And you deserve a seat at a table where everyone is glad you're there. God bless you all.